the Gospel of Matthew, we learn of Joseph's reaction to the news of Mary's pregnancy. When he discovers that Mary is with child, he considers divorcing her. In Christian tradition, there have been three ways of explaining the story. The first view holds that Joseph wanted to divorce Mary because he thought that she had committed adultery. Doctors of the church like St. John Chrysostom and St. Augustine, as well as most contemporary biblical scholars, advocate for this position. The second interpretation maintains a kind of opposite view. It holds that Joseph wanted to divorce Mary because he knew the child had been miraculously conceived of the Spirit. He wanted to separate from Mary because in humility, he thought he was unworthy to live with the mother of such a child. Thomas Aquinas advocates for this position, as well as some contemporary writers, such as the theologian Karl Rahner. The reason most have rejected this view, however, is that it doesn't really make good sense of the story as we have it. An angel goes on to appear to Joseph in a dream to tell him how the child was conceived. Because of this, it seems unlikely that Joseph seeks to divorce Mary because he knows the child is holy. While some have argued that this view is still possible, citing various features of the narrative and trying to make sense of it in that way, the arguments really fall apart under closer examination, especially when the story is read in Greek. The third view is especially associated with another doctor of the church, St. Jerome. Jerome believed that Joseph didn't know what was going on. He didn't really know what to think about what was happening. In fact, this view is attested really early on in the Proto-Evangelium of James, a non-biblical work that was written in the 100s. There, Joseph actually goes through a kind of series of reactions to the news. First, he accuses Mary of being unfaithful, but then Mary swears an oath that she has been faithful to Joseph. And this causes Joseph to be perplexed. So he begins to wonder if maybe the child has some sort of supernatural origin. Either way, he thinks it's best to just step aside. If something's going on from the Lord, well, he hasn't been let in on this. Matthew never tells us exactly why Joseph wants to divorce Mary. The attempts above look to fill in the details, all right, fill in the blanks. The key thing to be observed is that Joseph is allowed to go through this kind of trial. The great spiritual writer John of the Cross would talk about how faith needs to be purified. He talks about the fact that we shouldn't seek to pray out of a desire to feel better about ourselves, to have warm and fuzzy emotions. Ultimately, faith means learning to trust in God even in the dark. And so John of the Cross, therefore, would speak of the need for the believer to endure dark nights. That is, periods in the spiritual life when divine consolation seems distant, where we don't have clarity about what God's will is for us. In this, Joseph is a model of faith. Even though he remains in the dark, he still wants to be faithful. In fact, the one thing Matthew tells us about Joseph is that being a righteous man and not being willing to put her, Mary, to shame, he decided to divorce her secretly. So even facing this stressful situation, Joseph wanted to act charitably and righteously. Joseph is therefore a model for faith. Thanks for watching this video. Hope you'll consider sharing it with others. Have a very Merry Christmas.